Looks like it's cut off again, is it?
No, I mean, I
Oh,
think it's
good.
okay
Okay.
now.
Hello everybody. Welcome to another event of the PMI Greece chapter. Please join me in welcoming Spencer Horn as our speaker. Spencer is a dynamic speaker and executive coach who has been inspiring, changing business worldwide for over 3 decades. He's standing on an impressive 2 meters high, and he's a high energy, engaging, and interactive speaker, trainer, and a coach who brings a wealth of experience to us today. In his 31 years of executive experience, Spencer has worked with major organizations such as IMAX, National Geographic Television, Radio City Productions, and Disney Films, among others, to help them develop productive and focused corporate cultures that will lead them to high performing teams and engage employees and volunteers. So, special experience and expertise in leadership and team development make him an ideal speaker for today's topic, flexible authenticity, to help us learn how we can be more effective as project managers and in our personal lives. So, Spencer, without any further ado, please. Uh, I'm really happy to have you here, and I had the honor to meet you in person in the Global Summit, and it's the first time we're having a webinar with a keynote speaker out of Greece, and someone can really pronunciate my name, right? So this is what I kept for for the introduction. So welcome, Spencer, and I'm really looking forward for your presentation.
Oh, Efkaristo Achilles. Let's see if I can get this right. Lipamai puden milau Elenika. I am so
That's
sorry
that's
that,
great. That's great. I know that you're
but I am
studying hard Greek.
practicing.
Yeah, I know that you're practicing. So welcome, Spencer.
Thank you, Kalispera. Good evening, everyone, and I'm so excited to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. Hopefully, you will yell out questions as we go and as you have them. This is a topic to me that is I'm very passionate about, and flexible authenticity is all about leadership. And so I have a question for you, and that is, who makes the best leaders? I get this question all the time, and I'm asked is what style of leadership is most effective for leading? And in my experience, I have found that the most effective leaders have one thing in common, and there's no one approach that is more effective than another. And my experience is backed up by over 1,000 studies of leadership styles, which is the most effective and which is the one that you need to have. But what they all agree on, and what my experience agrees with all these studies, is that you must be authentic as a leader. However, our understanding of authenticity creates some challenges, and that's what I want to discuss with you. It's one of the most authentic leaders that I know was a gentleman by the name of Kelvin Cullimore. He was a mentor of mine when I was young in my career. Kelvin ran two publicly traded companies. He was the CEO of these two companies. And I remember after I graduated from the University of Utah with my master's degree in economics, and I started working for him, he inspired me to grow and to learn and to develop as a leader. And he cared deeply for his family, for my family. He cared for everyone that worked for him. And he inspired us to challenge our thinking, to learn, to grow, to change. He welcomed feedback. He challenged our ideas. He challenged us to set goals, to strive, to achieve more, to get uncomfortable. He empowered and encouraged us as team members, and he had standards of excellence that he did not compromise. And he was flexible in his means and methods of achieving of his goals. And he could laugh at himself and put others at ease, and he could also make them uncomfortable. So for me, he was somebody that was loved and respected by our team, but he is a great example of someone who was flexible in his means and methods. He also helped us innovate something that many of us take for granted today. I don't know if you've ever been to an IMAX theater in the movie theater, and you've seen a regular movie showed on an IMAX theater. Has anyone ever been to an IMAX theater? Well, if you have, these giant projectors, 32 years ago, we really innovated more of an entertainment style of film being used for these IMAX projectors. Typically, they were used for science centers and museums, but we were unique in creating them for entertainment. We had a theater in Branson, Missouri, which is in a country music capital in the United States. And we had to compete against Glenn Campbell, Jim Stafford, the Osmonds, Tony Orlando, Lee Greenwood, the Mandrell sisters. Maybe you don't know who these entertainers are, but we were a movie theater and we had to compete with live entertainers. And so we had to be very innovative and creative. In my experience today, there are very few leaders like Kelvin Cullimore. I believe one of the reasons that there are so few leaders like them is that there is this movement in leadership called strengths-based leadership. And it's causing people, in my experience, to ignore their blind spots, to ignore their weaknesses. So there are benefits to a strengths-based approach. Let me get rid of that logo on there. Okay, come on, there we go. There are benefits to that, but I propose that there are also weaknesses to this strengths-based leadership. Many of the challenges I see in organizations and relationships come from the overuse of strengths and the lack of awareness of the impact of our weaknesses. And I agree with the psychologist Martin Seligman that happiness and success does not come from studying our failures, our disorders, or the negative aspects of life. And he suggests that living a meaningful and fulfilling life comes when we overcome challenges, redefine attitudes, and work on activities that are meaningful and that energize us. Those are things that give us excitement and purpose and meaning. And I believe happiness and success come from utilizing our strengths, of course, but also by overcoming our blind spots and our weaknesses and having victories over our own weaknesses, so to speak. So this means overcoming challenges and redefining our attitudes. Managing your strengths and weaknesses will have a positive impact, which will be meaningful for you and energizing for you as well. So I recently heard a speaker at a major conference. As a matter of fact, it was at the global PMI conference, Achilles, that you were at. I went to one of the breakout sessions, and one of the speakers, she said, just focus on your strengths. And I wrote down what she said, and I'm going to quote her. She said, if you just focus on your strengths, it will pull up what did she say? It'll pull up or strengthen your weaknesses. I disagree. And here's why. I'm going to give you some examples. Working on your strengths may hide your weaknesses, but so let me give you a couple of sporting examples. I don't know if any of you play golf. I'm a terrible golfer. But if you do play golf, how many of you have a favorite club? Maybe it's the driver, maybe it's the putter, or maybe it's an iron that you're most comfortable with. According to her, all she says is if your strength is the driver, you just focus on getting better at the driver and you'll get better at being a putter. You see how that's a fallacious argument? If I want to be good at golf and my weakness is my putter, I have to work on putting. I have to work on that weakness in order for me to be more effective at the game of golf. You want to win a championship? You don't do that just by focusing on your strengths. You also have to work on some of those weaknesses. Now, let me give you another example of an Olympic skater by the name of Scott Hamilton. Scott Hamilton was on my podcast not too long ago, about a year and a half ago. And we had a great discussion, and he talked a lot about his experience of winning 4 Olympic gold medals. and Scott was he's just an incredible individual. And he tells the story of when he was starting out skating. He said, I wasn't really very good. I think he said he was ninth twice, seventh in the junior nationals in the United States. So in the United States, he was pretty low. But his mother was diagnosed with cancer, and he rededicated himself to skating, and he was able to win a championship at the U.S. Nationals. And then his mother died, and he used that as motivation to just get better and better all the time. And Scott took his mother with him every day on the ice, and he decided to be the best skater that he could be. And he increased his commitment, and this changed everything. He came in third in the U.S. and 11th in the world. And 2 years later, he made the Olympic team. He came in fifth on the Olympic team. Now, there were several other skaters ahead of him, and they retired after they had won gold and silver and bronze. So he ended up the next day number 2 in the world. The number 1 skater had strengths that were Scott's weaknesses. And he said to himself, what do I have to do in order to beat the number 1 skater in the world? He had to learn to embrace what are called compulsory figures. You know, all those figure eights that they have to do. He said, I hated them, and they hated me. And that was his weakest element. But he changed, and he learned to embrace that weakness, and it became a strength. It was never his number 1 strength, but that is what allowed him to be number 1 and win multiple Olympics. And when his children ask him, Dad, what is the greatest strength? He says, a lack of weakness. Now, before we get worried about this, I want you to understand there's a methodology to working on your weaknesses. Our strengths give us energy. They motivate us. And working on weaknesses takes energy and can drain us. So we have to be very strategic, and I will be explaining that as we go. But I want you to understand the concept and apply it to leadership. When I'm talking about strengths, I'm not talking about, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I get too excited. So Scott is talking about adding more strengths to the asset column. And this really contradicts that whole strengths-based movement in my experience. So let's talk about this authentic flexibility idea. Or flexible authenticity. My idea of flexible authenticity is not working on your aptitudes. For example, if you are not good at accounting, study accounting. That's not what I'm talking about. If you are not good at technology, work on it. That's not what I'm saying. Focus on those areas that are your aptitudes and your interests. What I'm talking about is more about behavior. It's more about leadership. So I'm focusing on your communication styles. That's the kind of flexibility that I'm talking about. So research by the consulting firm, the Hay McBear consulting firm, they studied over 3,871 professionals all over the world in all different types of professions. And they found that the most successful leaders were able to adapt their leadership style between 6 leadership styles. What were those 6 leadership styles? You may want to write these down because I don't list them on my computer. Number 1, coercive. Coercive, when you hear that, you think, well, that doesn't sound very good. But are there times when we need to say, do what I say right now? There are times in emergencies. There are times when you don't have time to get opinions, where you just have to take action. Yet some people have that as a strength, and if you use it too much, it becomes a weakness. So that leads us to the second leadership style, which is authoritative. If I'm an authoritative leader, I am somebody that sets the example and I say, come with me. I set a vision and I bring people along and teach them how to do things the right way. That is a great leadership style. As a matter of fact, it's one of the most positive. Now, it sounds like authoritative, that might be a negative. It is not. It is more about come with me instead of do as I say. Then we have what's called a pace setting leadership style. What is that? That's one that sets high standards, one that is able to encourage people to reach, to grow to adapt, to strive, one that can work hard, and sometimes we need to work really hard. But could you imagine if that's all we ever do is just grind, 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 that can be a weakness too? If all we ever do is show this is the way we do it, that could be a weakness too. So think of it as a golf club. The coercive could be the driver where you hit things long and far. The authoritative might be maybe an iron where you need to place a ball just right. The pace setting, you may think that's a different club needed for a different scenario. Then we have affiliative. Affiliative is a style of leadership that puts people first, that brings people together, that makes them feel valued, and it builds relationships. And relationships are so important for you as a project manager to get buy-in, to get support for your ideas. And then we have a coaching style where we help people to learn and to grow and to understand. And then we will have I'm missing one, is the democratic style, which brings in all the voices of the team. But what happens if we have to make a quick decision? We can't wait to hear everybody's opinions. So I want you to think about those 6 styles. You've got democratic, you've got affiliative, you've got coaching, you've got pace setting, you've got authoritative, and then you've got coercive. All 6 of those are required for you to be able to be an effective leader. And they are different for different situations, just like you must use a different club for a different situation if you're golfing. So I can give you more examples of how those leadership styles show up, but I'm going to wait for that in case we have questions. I want to do a process for just a moment. I want you to think of those 6 leadership styles. Which are your strengths? As I've described them to you just at a high level, are there 2 or 3 that you feel you are naturally good at? And are there 2 or 3 that you feel that you are naturally maybe not so good at or you struggle with? Typically, in my experience, there are people that are good at the coercive, the authoritative, and the pace setting, and they struggle with the democratic and the affiliative and the coaching. Likewise, people who are really good at coaching and affiliative and democratic might struggle being more assertive with the coercive and the authoritative style. So I'd like to hear from some of you who are on the call right now. How many of you feel that you relate to some of those styles more than others? Do we have any of those comments? I see, let's see if I can show the conversation. So put in there if you feel like one of those leadership styles in the chat is your strength. I'm looking. Okay. Well, Miriam says coaching and democratic. Wonderful. Thank you for, yeah, those are easier for you. Panayotis, how are you? Democratic is your strength. Wonderful. We've got coaching for Desponia. That's great. Elias, coaching. Artemis, maybe democratic and coaching. Yes. So yeah, you know yourself a little bit, and if you're interested, I'll help you discover which one is probably or which ones are probably your strengths. But you need all 6. Now, what does it take for you to be able to adapt? It takes exactly that: flexibility, adaptability. We know that authenticity is important. And there's overwhelming evidence that your sustained success as a project manager depends on you being an authentic leader. But there are several challenges of you being authentic. And there are situations like if you are newly promoted or you are a new leader, being in a situation like this can be a problem. Why? Because you may have a drive to prove that you deserve to be in this position. And so the extrinsic rewards that you are wanting to achieve cause you to just be focused on behaving in a certain way that doesn't make you very flexible or adaptable. You're not listening to your team. Why? Because you have to come up with all the ideas. How many of you have seen leaders who, in certain circumstances, they're new in a position and they feel like they have to have all the answers? that is a problem that can prevent you from being flexible and adaptable. That leaves little time for self-reflection and self-improvement because it's all about bottom line results. And the problem is they can't always maintain these results. And then it takes a crisis or a personal pain to help them really regain their authenticity. Here's another situation where people struggle with authenticity, and that is self-advocating or selling yourself. Some of you feel very uncomfortable selling yourself. I was speaking at a conference in 2019. I had a conversation that illustrates this perfectly. I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And after I gave a message to an audience of about 60 people, it was a small group, one of the project managers came up to me, and she was a project manager originally from Serbia. She was very professional. She was successful in her work. She had 5 direct reports. And she asked me a question. She says, "How come I didn't get promoted?" I said, "Tell me about the situation." She says, "I have 5 direct reports, and there was an opportunity for me to get the position of vice president. And I wanted that because I could be a better leader for my team than the leader that was there before. And I felt like I could really help take my leadership skills to a broader team." And she says, "The person who got the job, I feel, is not as qualified as I am." And I asked her a question. I said, "Tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you more comfortable with just putting your head down and doing your best and hope that the leadership of the company recognizes your strength rather than promoting yourself and talking about why you deserve that position?" She says, "Exactly. That's what I did. I just do my job and hope that they recognize the value that I bring." I said, "You are more concerned with earning the promotion. The person who got the promotion was more comfortable at winning the promotion." There's a big difference between winning and earning. It's a different personality. It's a different approach. The person who won it advocated for themselves. They said, "This is why I deserve the job. This is why I want to be in that position. This is why you should hire me." And the person that was making that hiring decision understood that language more than somebody that was humble and quiet and just put their head down and do a good job. But because you were unwilling to get uncomfortable, to get out of your comfort zone, to self-advocate, your team now has a leader that is not as strong as it could have been had you been willing to get uncomfortable. See, sometimes our idea of authenticity creates problems for us, which I will get into, because in her mind, if I self-advocate, that's not being humble. That's not who I am. That's not the leader that makes me great. But because she was unwilling to do that, she now did not get the promotion that she desired or deserved. Because that is what I want you to focus on when you think about flexible authenticity. Not about the behavior, but what are the outcomes? What are the goals that you want to achieve? And does how you behave help you to achieve your goals as a project manager or even in your personal life? Here's one more scenario where being your authentic self can create problems for you. That is in receiving feedback. So I'm going to share with you one more situation. John, and that's not his real name, is a manager at a nonprofit that I was working with recently. And he had some serious problems. He was very direct in his leadership style. He was very logical. He was very abrupt. He was very coercive and his authoritative style was not positive. It was all about forcing people to do things his way. Why? Because he believed that his more logical based approach was better than any emotional based approach. And his coworkers were frustrated with him and wanted to get him fired. His employees felt like he was a bully and they reported him to the human resources department. And he was getting ready to be fired because of his abusive behavior. And he didn't understand it at first. He just thought, well, I'm just being factual. He didn't care about relationships. He wasn't affiliative. He didn't take time to have lunch with anybody or get to know them or even say hi in the hallway. He thought that emotion-based approach was weaker and less value than his more factual, bottom line approach. He was direct, he was abrasive, he was abrupt. And he didn't understand that that was creating a problem for the firm and for him personally. So he wasn't willing to take feedback. Why? Because he had to be his authentic self, to be that direct, accurate, and fact-based type of leader. And as a result, his unwillingness to adapt his style threatened his career. So we have a paradox. And that paradox is, as you progress in your career, you will have many opportunities to grow and change. That's going to cause you to feel uncomfortable. Some may even feel the temptation to rely on what you know and the way you've always behaved, ways that are natural for you. You know, I started coaching a project manager who had 15 years of experience. And she was concerned that her current behavior was preventing her from becoming an executive. Her dominance and directness were off-putting. And so she was losing the respect of her peers over time. The only way to achieve the success that she desires is to change her approach, to reinvent herself. This is uncomfortable and can cause us to just feel like that's not authentic. It's not who we really are. But here is the point that I really want you to understand. I want this to be clear. Being authentic is going to require her, it's going to require you to see yourself as you must become. Her desire was to be an effective leader, to earn the respect of her peers, her coworkers. Her intentions were to influence the team positively. Her impact, however, was that she was pushing them away by being abrupt and direct. She was new on the team and had not earned their respect or their trust. This authenticity of not staying true to who she is was preventing her from growing. So I want you to think of authenticity as being true to what it is you want to achieve, not to just the behavior that you identify with. I'm only a coaching style of leader. I'm only a coercive style of leader. It is to understand, in order to achieve your goals, to win that championship, you may need to learn how to strengthen some of your weaknesses. Being true to who you must become to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. Progression is a part of the human experience. If I were to say I must be authentic to myself, when is that authentic self emerge? When I was 5 years? Should I be authentic to who I was when I was 5 years old, 15 years old, 25 years old, who I was when I graduated from college? At what point do I stop progressing and learning because I say I have to stay who I am? It's always about learning and growing. I have another CEO that I'm coaching right now. He's a perfectionist. He's controlling. His natural style is pace setting and coercive. Those are the two styles. And he wants his team to do exactly what he does, and he wants them to do it now. And so he's lowered engagement on his team. They don't trust him anymore. He's had high turnover and frustration, and he is unwilling. If he's not able to change that and to become more authoritative and coaching and help them to come along, then his team will disintegrate. It's a small company, and it's happening, and he will continue to fail as a leader. Now, he doesn't want that, but he has to learn how to adapt, and we're working on that. Okay, you know, let me just go back to the leader I was coaching, who was a project manager. And, you know, it could be really funny for her to just step into a room and say, all right, everybody, here's the problem. You need to change how we're doing this project right now. It's not working. We need to change the way we've been doing things. I have more experience than all of you. Even though I'm new on the team, you need to listen to me. You need to change how you communicate. You need to change how you show up. You need to be more direct. You need to be, how is that going to work for her team? Now, I'm telling you this because these are real scenarios that happen every single day. And they prevent you and they prevent me from having the success that we want to have. Okay, so are you interested in learning about more of your leadership style? Do you want to do a process that would help you to identify that? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a human scattergram. And so wherever you are right now, I need you to stand up, okay? And you need to, it's okay, stand up. Even you, Ahilia, come on, stand up. There you go. Everyone needs to stand up. Okay, Natia, thank you. Konstantinos, yes, stand up. All right, now you need to have a little bit of space, so you may have to move away from your camera. I want you to, you need to be able to step forward and step backwards. The first thing you're going to do is imagine that there's a line right at your feet. Okay, can you see that? Now I'm going to be using adjectives, and if you don't understand them, I may need somebody to be able to translate for me because I'm going to ask you to move forward or backwards. Okay, based on the adjective that I share with you. For example, if you consider yourself more persuasive, take a step forward. If you consider yourself more humble, take a step backwards. Okay? Does everybody understand? If you are more persuasive, step forward. If you're more humble, step backwards. That's the first one. We got a few of these. If you are more loud, step forward. If you are more soft spoken, take one step backwards. If you are daring, take one step forward. If you are more prepared, take one step backward. Daring forward, prepared backwards. If you are impulsive, step forward. Or steady, if you are steady, step backwards. If you are more analytical, step forward. Or more accurate, step backwards. Analytical forward, accurate backwards. If you are a risk taker, step forward. Or more sensitive, step backwards. If you are more results oriented, step forward. If you are more perfectionist, step backwards. If you're more quick, step forward. If you are more deliberate, step backwards. If you're more friendly, step forward. If you are more discreet, step backwards. If you're more assertive, step forward. If you're more careful, step backwards. If you're just a few more, 4 more. If you are controlling, step forward, or more supportive, step backwards. If you're more motivating, step forward, or more thoughtful, step backwards. If you're more energetic, step forward, or more reserved, step backwards. You lost some calories, Konstantinos. If you are more spontaneous, step forward, or more predictable, step backwards. Okay, so now I've given you all these adjectives, and you should be either in front of the line or behind the line. You're so far back, Miriam, I can't hear anymore. That's great. So is anybody close to the line? Because you could have gone forward on some and back on some. Okay. So in front of the line for one step. Okay, that's great. But Miriam is so far back. Some of you may be far in the front, and some of you, we're not done yet. We've got one more thing, but let me explain where we've come so far. Okay, so in these questions, these adjectives, if you're either in front of the line, these are communication styles. This is completely unscientific, but it's a lot of fun. But it will help us to be 50 to 70% accurate about what your hydrate is. Only 50 to 70% accurate. So if you are in front of the line, you're probably more of a direct style of communicator. Okay, so what is a direct style of communicator? Spencer, turn on the light. If you are behind the line, you are probably more of an indirect style of communicator. That would be, Spencer, if you don't mind, would you please turn on the light, just because it'll just be so more productive for all of us to see. So that's Grigoris, you're 4 steps in front, right? Rula's behind the line. So is it true? Do you feel like those of you who are in front of the line are probably more direct in your communication, and those behind the line might be a little softer and indirect, more polite in their communication? So think of it that way. Okay, exactly. Excellent. So again, this is a guideline. If you understood the words, and I know I'm speaking it in English, and you guys are amazing to be able to be quadlingual, that you have all these different languages. Okay, so we'll talk about those other 2 in just a second. All right, we've got one more assignment. Now, this time we're going to go to the left or the right. So stand in the middle, and you've got a line. You've got to choose to the left or to the right. One more time, stand up. Yes, all of you stand up. Okay, so If you are more challenging, I want you to step to the left. If you are more agreeable, I want you to step to the right. If you are more decisive, I want you to step to the left, or more sociable, I want you to step to the right. If you're more adventuresome, step left, or more deliberate, step right. If you are more diplomatic, step left, or more considerate, step right. If you are more competitive, step left, or more easygoing, step right. If you're more stubborn, step left, or more sweet, Glika, how's that right? Step right. If you are more bold, step left, or more charming, step right. If you are more admirable, step left. If you are more kind, step right. If you are more forceful, step left, or more patient, step right. If you are more skeptical, step left, or more receptive, step right. If you are trustworthy, step left, or generous, step right. If you are concrete, step left, or compassionate, step right. Okay, that's it. Now you can take your seats. So you should either have ended up to the left of the line or to the right of the line. Now I recognize some of you may be close to the line because you're flexible. Okay, left 2 steps. Left, Christina, Tolia, excellent. Andy, good to see you, Andy. To the left, yes, that's right. George, 2 steps to the right. Miriam, 2 steps to the right. Look at that. Oh, Philippidis, right 2 steps. Zenonas is 3 to the left. Okay, so you kind of went back and forth a couple times, but it's interesting, there is a intensity matters, right? The further away you are from the line, the more intense you are into that quadrant, right? So the further front you are, the more direct you are. The further back you are, the less direct you are. And the closer to the line, the more flexible. So intensity is important here in terms of the distance from that line. The same is true for the left and to the right. Now let's talk about what those mean for a moment, okay? So if you are more to the left, you are typically more task oriented. It's all about getting stuff done, checking the box. It's think about that for a second. You're wanting to be productive. If you're more on the right side, you're probably more people focused. It's all about gaining the trust and the collaboration of the team. So those 4 styles, now this is kind of based on disc theory, and it has its flaws, and I'm not a huge disc fan, but I like this process just because it's so simple and easy to do. Like I said, completely unscientific. If you want a scientific methodology to find out your high traits, we can do that. But this is based on theory that has been around for a long time and applied here, and it just helps us to identify the high trait. Why the high trait? If you know what your high trait is, dominance, extroversion, patience, or conformity, then you will understand 50 to 70% of your most recognizable behaviors. And that gives you a huge advantage to understand how you behave and in terms of your leadership and your adaptability. So for those of you, this is to help you clarify a little bit. If you are direct and task oriented, you're probably higher dominance. You probably are more comfortable with the coercive or the authoritative and the pace setting styles. If you are direct and people oriented, you're probably pretty good at the pace setting and the authoritative and even the coaching style. If you are pace, you're really good at the affiliative and the pace setting and also the coaching style and the affiliative style. If you're conformity, you're really good at authoritative pace setting as well. Now, here's something that will help you clarify if you're in the right quadrant. The direct above the line is usually active, fast-paced, assertive, and bold. Below the line is usually more thoughtful, moderate-paced, calm, and careful. To the left, you're typically more questioning, skeptical, logic-focused, and challenging. To the right, you're more accepting, receptive, and people-focused and agreeable. So do you all feel like that you are in the correct quadrant? If you feel like you're in the correct quadrant, then give me an amen or a nay. Nay, nay. Um, so here's one more way for you to check. As you look at all of these adjectives, you'll probably have adjectives in all four quadrants, but the one quadrant that has the most adjectives is probably your, yes, Ahilia, nay, is probably your high trait. Um, so that's what I wanted you to identify. Once you identify your high trait, now you can know what your blind spots are, your weaknesses. We all have them. So let me share these with you. And I want you to be completely honest. Yes, Constantino, you are probably an E. Yes. Let's see that big smile. That's an E smile. Come on, let's see that. um, so here are the backup styles for each of the traits. So for example, if you find that you are a high dominant personality, you can become what's called a dictatorial steamroller. That is a problem that the project manager who wanted to get the respect of her team, but she was experienced but new on the team. She disregarded their opinions, their feelings. That's a blind spot for a style of leader that is more comfortable being coercive all the time. High extroverts launch what are called a verbal attack. They talk too much, they explain too much. If someone disagrees with them, they'll keep explaining a different way. They'll get sarcastic. For the high pace or high patient, if you were on that bottom right corner, you can tend to avoid conflict or wait longer than you should to have difficult conversations. That was the style of the project manager in Michigan that got overlooked for the promotion. She was really good at caring for her people. She was affiliative. She was democratic, a great leader. But because she was unwilling to self advocate, that was a blind spot because she was avoiding conflict. She was unwilling to get uncomfortable. And the last are the high conforming. And they get stubborn. They have to be right. They have to do things their way because they think they have all the answers. Now, how many of this, how does this resonate with you so far? Do you feel like it's fairly accurate? Love to hear. Just give me a nay or an ohi. Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, I just, again, this is high level, not scientific. I want to give you a couple of case studies. How are we doing on time? We got about 15 minutes. Let's see if I can read that. Fasika. I don't know.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so we've got about 15 minutes. I'll do my best to wrap up. Is that right, Ahilia?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. No worries.
Okay.
Take your time.
So I want to share with you a couple of real stories. So this is a profile. This is different than the disc profile that I've shared with you. This is a profile of a CPA that I was coaching in New York. Okay, no names, but this is more than just the high trait. So the high trait you can see is conforming, but he also had very low extroversion, low dominance, pace at the line. His logic, which is style of decision making, was fact based. His energy style was very what we call loyal in that A was he's just somebody that finishes whatever he starts. And his energy was pretty high, was at about a 5. So this is a great profile for an accountant. The problem was he's a perfectionist who likes to be right. And he wants to minimize mistakes. And he doesn't want ever to get negative feedback. He doesn't enjoy when someone tells him he made a mistake. And this is causing all kinds of problems with his accounting firm. His partners are saying that he takes too long on all the projects. Let me give you an example of what happened. A couple of his friends asked him for tax advice. Why? Because that's his expertise. He is a tax expert. He gave them an answer. This was while he was working at his job in tax season. He was helping his friends because that's just part of who he is. He wants to be a supportive friend. After he gave the advice to these two friends, he had to stop and look up the answer he gave them to make sure that it was right. What he told them was accurate. That was time that he took away from doing his work. When there are emergencies, the partners bring the emergency to him, and he has to stop what he's doing and focus on the emergency. And he never wants to be wrong, so it takes him a lot longer than the partners want, which means he bills for more time than he should. And that makes the clients unhappy, which makes the partners unhappy, which then give him more negative feedback, which causes him to work harder to not make a mistake. Now, whose problem is it? Is it the partners or is it the CPAs? It's both. They are causing him to shut down, but his need for perfection, for not being flexible, to let go. The solution is quite simple, but he has to learn how to adapt to his partners and the situation. One of the things he has to get very comfortable with is saying, listen, here are the projects I'm working on. He has a choice. He can stop doing whatever he's working on and handle the project, the emergency, but then he has to go back to the old project and start, where was he? What was he doing at the time? It takes him so long to get back into it. He becomes very, very inefficient. So what are his choices when the partners come to him? He said he could drop everything and respond to the emergency. Number two, he could get to a stopping point and then handle the emergency. Number three, he could not take care of the emergency. Or number four, he could communicate to both partners, the one he's supporting on the project right now and the one who comes to him for a emergency, and say, listen, here's where I'm at. Here are the different projects I have to deal with. You need to decide what are the priorities right now, because right now I'm in an awkward position. And I want to make sure that I meet the needs of the highest priority. But if I stop one project to work on an emergency without communicating to the other partner, they get frustrated. It's on him to be able to manage those expectations. It's on them to be able to be aware that he can't do everything all at once. I want you to close your eyes for just a second. Close your eyes, and whatever you do, do not picture a red bicycle. How many of you saw a red bicycle when I told you not to? Yeah, you're not supposed to see a red bicycle. But I see some comments that I want to come back to, but you may be indirectly self-sabotaging by focusing on the negative. It's like playing not to lose in sports. You lose because you're being too conservative. Think about that project manager who got overlooked for the promotion. She lost because she's like, oh, I can't sell myself, because that's not being humble. That's not who I am. I can't talk about myself. Other people need to talk about me. If you're not willing to advocate for yourself, who will? Now, I know there's some good people who will advocate out there, but not always. So with this individual, I had him work really hard on learning how to begin to adapt and be able to stand up for himself. The problem he was having, he was losing confidence. He was losing the confidence in his own ability to do the job, and that was just causing him to take more and more and more time. And he was spiraling out of control. This is very, very common in the workplace. So you have a question. I have a feeling that over the years of managing teams, I have changed from the fixed D to a more flexible style, depending on the team, person, project, and needs. That's great. That's flexible authenticity. It's situational leadership. And learning how to do that is something that you all of us need to learn how to do. So I want to share with you a couple of success stories. I work with a team in Las Vegas that is a digital marketing team, and they were completely dysfunctional. And after working with them for 1 year, productivity increased by 50%. Their revenue went up hugely. John, the controlling manager at the nonprofit that I was telling you about, he was able to rebuild trust with the team, saved his job. There was another CPA, her name is Janeth. She was laid off, and she was not getting any interest in her resume. And so she started doubting herself until she learned how to adapt her leadership style. That led to a new job and a promotion. There's another project manager that in Europe, I won't say the name, but she learned how to increase her strengths and minimize her weaknesses, which led to her getting on the PMI board of her chapter and greater success in working for a Big Four accounting firm. So how do you do this? What are the strategies that you can implement today to become more flexibly authentic? That's what we're going to end with, is 3 suggestions. Number 1, you must increase your awareness. You've got to be aware of what your weaknesses are. That takes self-awareness. That can come from feedback from your team, from a trusted advisor, from a coach, from assessments, from a 360 evaluation. Understand the impact and the cost of not changing this behavior. At the end of this, I'm going to give you a QR code if you want to download a free disc style assessment. Okay, it's better than what we just did, but it's still free and it's still a disc, which is not great. You have to put your name in there, but there's no real information going anywhere. If you want it, you just fill in your name and email address, and you can access it and download several PDFs that I'm going to talk to you about. That's my gift to you. Okay. Or if you want a more science-based and accurate assessment, you can buy one. Okay. Now it's going to be, I don't know, 55 euros. It's not cheap. You've got to, but it's fantastic. And it's very, very powerful. You can do the free one, or you can buy one that is unparalleled in accuracy. Number 2, learn humility. Humility is the valuable, fertile soil of good character. It enables the seeds of personality growth to germinate. Reframe how you feel about your personal weaknesses. There's always an opportunity to learn and develop. Pride is avoiding our faults to appear better than we really are. Pride is antithetical to being authentic. It's just, we can't be authentic when we just are unwilling to adapt and say that this is the way I am, this is the way I'll always be. Next, I want you to identify just one weakness, which improved even 5% would have a huge impact on your performance and your relationships. Now, in that download that I'm going to give you is a survey based on your high traits and your low traits, which I worked on with a friend of mine. We've come up with many, many weaknesses, a list, not just the 4 that I listed before. You can identify the one that is causing you the most pain and problem right now in your career and in your relationship. Just focus on one. Just one. Why? Remember, our strengths give us energy. Working on the weaknesses can take energy. But when we overcome them, just like as psychologist Martin Seligman said, we have a huge success, and that's where the endorphins come, and that's where the victory comes. Overcoming difficult things leads to confidence, leads to empowerment, but it also takes energy to get there, and we have to recognize that. So how do we do? Once you've identified the weakness, now we want to create what is the opposite of that weakness. So for example, if my weakness is I interrupt others when they speak, well, the opposite of that is I listen to people patiently before responding. So you find the weakness and then identify its opposite. Once you've identified that opposite, now we can begin to work on measuring your progress to change. And that's what is the last step. I want you to measure daily how you are doing with that behavior. And in the download, I give you a spreadsheet. You can make your own. And every day, you're going to ask yourself this simple question: did I do my best to listen to others patiently before speaking? For example, if that's the behavior that you want to create. And you rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10. You must be brutally honest with yourself. and you mark that every day. Every day, how did I do? Did I have a bad day? Put a 3. And instead of criticizing yourself, what I want you to do is be curious. Why did I struggle today? And start to create more awareness around what's causing you to behave in ways that are counter to your success, to your ability to adapt. And once that one behavioral strength that you're trying to create becomes a strength, you can work on the next one and then the next one until you eliminate those things that are preventing you from having the success that you want to have. Now, this takes effort. I love to climb mountains. I want to demonstrate it's just going to take effort. Do me a favor, interlock your fingers really quickly. Just take your hands and interlock all your fingers. Okay. Now what I want you to do is I want you to change them and put the other finger on top. How does that feel? Does that feel a little weird? Feels a little different? Feels a little awkward. Yeah, I see you, Konstantinos. It feels a little awkward, right? So making a change, this is what's natural. My first way I do it is natural, but this is uncomfortable. It focusing on our strengths is comfortable. Okay, it's socolates. It's candy. It feels like arthritis. Yes, it does. But working on our weaknesses is uncomfortable. It is awkward. That's why I only want you to work on 1 or 2 at a time. It takes effort, right? It's gonna. This is me climbing to the top of a 3,400-meter peak, and my son taking pictures of me stopping and taking a rest. We got there, but we got to go slow. How many of you all speak foreign languages? I'm studying Greek right now. And here's one thing I promise. It takes time. I have now been doing it for 205 straight days. So not even a year. And I know you think I should be able to understand more than oh, he, and nay, right? Well, I do. I understand that, to pros avocado, a pink avocado, I know more than that. But the problem is if I stop using that, it completely goes away. If you don't use your English, it will deteriorate. It takes practice every day to learn a foreign language, and it is difficult. It takes effort and work, which I'm so proud of you that you've done that. Next, it takes accountability. You need someone to help hold you accountable. So maybe you have somebody on your team that can hold you accountable. Maybe there's somebody on this call that you can check in with once a week and say, how you doing on your goals to change that new behavior? If you want to go to the gym and get in shape, it's so much easier to do when you know somebody's going to be there and is expecting you to show up. Self accountability can be done, but it is hard. And the reason it's hard is because you can only rely on yourself. When you have someone else to hold you accountable, it's easier and you will change behavior faster. Now, you can pay a coach or work with somebody to help you create greater accountability. If you choose to purchase one of the behavioral assessment, like I said, it's about 55 euros. I will spend 1 hour with you going through that and helping you identify your blocks and come up with a strategy for you. That's an investment. People pay me about $400 a US dollars an hour for my coaching. I will give that to you if you want it. We'll do it over Zoom at your convenience. That's a give if you want to get that. Now, last story before we end. Well, before I get that, I just want to say, doing hard things changes us. There is a leadership essential, and that is sometimes we have to balance contraries. What is a contrary? Justice and mercy. If you have too much justice, there's no willingness to take risks or innovate. If you have too much mercy, you have chaos and anybody does whatever they want. The balance is, how do I, when I need to have more justice or when I need to have more mercy, night and day, those are two opposites. We need them both, right? Balancing your strengths and weaknesses is really important. I'm really good at taking action. I struggle at pondering and maybe planning as much as I need to. Well, sometimes taking action is the right thing to do, but sometimes not taking action and being more deliberate in planning is the right thing to do. Some of you may be too good at planning and you never get into action. Again, those are opposites, aren't they? So you need to have that flexibility. It's a contrary that you have to balance as a leader. So sometimes taking action is a weakness. Sometimes it's a strength. Some of you are great at pondering. Flexible authenticity means embracing and balancing of opposite behaviors. Taking charge versus being supportive. Outgoing versus being reserved. Patient versus being urgent. The best leaders use all 6 of those leadership styles. Now, I have learned flexible authenticity through making the mistake of relying too much on my natural strengths. And managers all over the world are learning from my mistakes. And their lives are getting easier. The problems aren't getting smaller. Just their ability to handle them is increasing. They're maximizing their strengths and they're minimizing their weaknesses. Now, I want to share with you one last story about how this applies to my personal life. I have been married for 36 years, 37 years in June. This is my wife, Jana. And this is downtown Los Angeles. This is kind of the inner city of Los Angeles. We were going to church in Los Angeles on New Year's Day this year, 2023. And we were in town to attend what's called the Rose Bowl. It's a big, huge football game. Our university was in the game. And as we were driving down the streets to get to this church, I was reading many of the signs on the street silently. Lots of them were in Spanish because there's lots of Hispanic businesses in downtown Los Angeles. And as I would read these signs, I would mention something that caught my attention, only to discover that my wife, Jana, had read the same sign, but she doesn't talk about it, right? On the way home, it happened again as we were going back to our hotel. I blurted out this word, pupuseria, which is a type of restaurant, Spanish, which is what I read on the sign. And I said, "Do you know what that means?" And she said, "I saw that too, and I was wondering what it is." And she said, "But you naturally are extroverted, so you read the signs out loud. I'm the opposite. I read them to myself." But here's the interesting thing that she said to me after that. She says, "I'm afraid that because I am less extroverted, I have caused you," she says, "I've noticed that you are becoming a lot less extroverted. And I'm sorry about that," she said to me. This was on our drive. And I said, "That's nonsense." I said, "You have learned to be more extroverted because you've lived with me for 36 years. In the morning, she's not a morning person. I love to talk in the morning. In the morning is when I want to talk the most. But because I love her, I don't talk to her in the morning. I love it when she takes time to share with me things that she's excited about. And she just starts talking because all of a sudden she gets excited and I stop and listen. But why am I willing to adapt? Because of the relationship. Now, some people may say, well, you need to be with somebody who just loves you for who you are. That's true. But what is also true is because I love her, I want her to feel comfortable. Do you find that there are people that you admire them because they have strengths that are your weaknesses? If you're less extroverted, you say, wow, I wish I could be more like that, more outgoing. Or if you're more outgoing, wow, I wish I could be like that, more thoughtful and prepared. It's so often that we admire people who have strengths that are our weaknesses. Yet we say people should accept us who we are. I get that, but I want to adapt to my wife and the relationship. Why? Because I love her. If you want to have access to any of these tools to help you to learn to be more flexibly authentic and adapt your leadership style, here's the QR code. You can download it. You just put your name and email. There's no form that it fills out. I just get an email that you did it. And then you'll have access to download several PDFs. It's up to you to take action. What you're going to do today. I recommend you choose one thing that you're going to do from today to improve your leadership to be more flexibly authentic. And Achilles, I
Yeah.
turn it back over to you.
All right. Great. Thank you so much, Spencer.
Do we have
Well,
questions?
yeah, I think we have one question already, and it's from Konstantinos. So I I don't know if you can see your screen. It's on the
Yes.
chat box. It's from Konstantinos. So he says that we prioritize to improve weakness, or shall we give it a go to improve something that we are already strong? So, for example, you have a
For
terrible
example,
voice. Yeah.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
so this is not what I'm talking about. Like I said in the beginning, it's not about it's not about if I'm a poor singer, I should learn how to sing. Unless singing is important to you, right? Unless you, I mean, I love to sing in a cappella choirs. I sang in a men's a cappella choir for many, many years. Now, I'm not particularly a great singer. My parents were, both of them were opera singers, but I love to sing. And for me, I'm not a great singer, but I spend time doing it because it brings me joy. If that's something that brings you joy, by all means, work on it. I am talking more about how do we adapt our behavior in leadership and relationships, in our business, in our personal life. I'm not talking about if you're not a good accountant and you want to be an accountant, well, maybe that's something you need to work on unless you don't have the strengths to or the aptitude. But if you have the strong motivation to do something, then absolutely by all means do it. So I reject, for me, I would not be, Achilles told you I am 2 meters 2 centimeters tall. I'm not going to be a good fighter pilot. I'm not going to be a good jockey. Why? Because I'm too big. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about behavior. I'm talking about leadership. Does that help, Konstantinos?
All right.
Good question.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks.
So please feel free, everybody, if you want to share any questions with Spencer. That's the right time. And again, thank you, Spencer, so much for your contribution, your amazing presentation. And thank you for sharing all of this free material. I really appreciate. So I guess we are okay. So thank you, everybody, for attending today's webinar, and stay tuned for our next upcoming events. Spencer, it was an honor to have you here. Thank you so much, everybody. Good night. Take care. Bye.
Kalispera.
Exactly.
You're
Bye.
welcome.
Good night.